Did you get a new one, Cindy?
She found it.
She got a new one? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. All right, we are on our last study of this quarter in Joshua. So we're going to be right here at the very end of Joshua. If you want to turn there in your Bibles.
Well, I can get you a new one there up on the front.
You have one of the new ones? Do you need a large print or you got the normal? Large. So I've enjoyed our study on Joshua. I've done several character studies on him in the past, and there's a lot to pull out of just the stories of Joshua. A lot to pull out historically, metaphorically, how it goes with our how we can apply it to ourselves today. There's a lot that goes on, and so Joshua is a very great story, and I'm going to hate to see it end as we're finishing it up. When we start with a word of prayer, though. Lord, thank you for this beautiful Sabbath day. Thank you for what you have given us this week and how that we have had another year. We're just about completing another year. I ask, Lord, that you be with those who are not here today. We know that there are quite a few that are out sick. And I ask, Lord, that you would bless them and give them a Sabbath day that can be helpful and refreshing as well. In your name, amen. All right. Would somebody want to read our memory text today?
And if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourself this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.
Okay. Who's got that on a plaque somewhere in their house, or a cup, or a saucer, or a plate? Well, we have that. Why? Why is that one that reaches out? I mean, there's a lot of verses in the Bible pretty good, but almost everybody has that one. Why?
Because it's a statement to say this house will serve the Lord, and I want it known to anybody that walks in my house.
Okay, it's a statement of faith. Okay, it's also a challenge. You know, when you walk by it, it reminds you. It's a challenge you to do better the next day and the next. And so, yep, I've got them in my house too. But it is like we are going to stand on something. And Joshua makes this very clear at the end of his life. He says, you got choices. And he lays it all out. He doesn't force feed it down anybody's throat, but he does give the options out there. And he weighs it out there in a big way of, you've got choices. And please look at them carefully because it's very, very important. But then he says, but for me and those who are with me, we're going to stand right here. He makes a very firm stand. And there's something about those challenging, those speeches that challenge you. It's like last week we read that one from FDR. There's some that just kind of pull at you because you go, I want to rise up and meet that challenge. I want to be that person. You know, there's something that pulls at us on that level. And we don't hear that as much as we used to hear it anymore. This world does a whole lot more on the complaining side, a lot more of the, oh, woe is me thing, instead of challenging us to be better, pulling at us to go, you know, we can be beyond what we are. We can follow something bigger. There's something bigger out there than who we are, and we can follow that. So I think that's why this one pulls at us so much, because Joshua's given the challenge, and then he makes the stand, and he sets the example, and you kind of go, ooh, I could follow an example like that. So that's where it's kind of cool. I think when I think of somebody in that kind of term, I think of Michael at the Boys Ranch. For the Boys Ranch group, he's an example. And now that's a challenging spot to be. That's a tough one. But parents have that same challenge. Leaders and communities have that same challenge. You're setting an example everywhere you go, and he's sitting there standing on it, and you better believe everybody believed it about him. They all went, yep, that's the guy.
Well, there's something to say, make a public statement. That's like taking an oath.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether you're a president, whether you're in the cabinet, everybody comes up and makes an oath for the public good, for something that you can stand on, like you said. There's something to be something to state this is where I will be, period. And I think that is, we all need that. And I think we do lack that today.
Yeah, we're wishy-washy today.
Well, it would be difficult to be Michael too, because if you have a bad day, and
everybody sees that too.
And a pointer here or there or something, you got all them boys to point it out to you.
It'd be tough. Yeah, those are tough spots. I mean, think about where Joshua was at. He is the oldest guy. Him and Caleb were the two oldest at this point in time in Israel. Everybody looks at them. Everybody knows their history. He's been there their whole lives. And, better believe everybody kind of knew what was going on in his business because he is the leader. And so him and Eleazar, and then you have Caleb and you had these guys were all kind of the top guys and everybody's watching. And so that's where Joshua had to really reinforce. And did Joshua slip up now and then? Did he forget stuff? Did he not do things correctly? I'm sure. But but for that stand, that's the one thing about salvation is we can come back. That grace God puts out to us when we do slip up. But this covenantal, what they put on Sabbath lesson, they called it a covenantal renewal ceremony. And I thought that was a good way of saying it. It's like, hey, do you come back and renew your covenant with God? That's something I do in my morning devotions. Not every day, but quite often. It's like, Lord, I want to renew my stand with you today. Let me do this fresh and new. Help me stand on the principles that I've done and that I've swore to, and I want to renew that again. Bring it fresh into my mind. So it's not an old hat. It's not for Joshua's time, it's like, that pillar of fire, you remember that, guys? It was just kind of an old thing. Yeah. No, we want to remember the sanctuary and what it's about. We want to refresh. That's why, when we do communion, I like to know it about a week or two ahead of time because I want time to prepare my mind for it and my spiritual side for it because it is a renewing. It is I am setting this fresh. I want to stand on it again. And so when he calls this a covenantal renewal, I like how he does it. He pulls all of Israel back into it to say, hey, here's my final plea with you guys. So if we go, just going to look for the one I wanted to read there. On Sunday's lesson, it talks about that they met at Shechem. Now, that's fascinating. Why is Shechem such a big deal? And it's kind of what tied really good into last week's lesson, too. But Shechem was an interesting place.
It was important to Abraham. Abraham built an altar there upon his arrival to the land because that's when God told him to leave and go, then this was the spot where he was going to be. And so they are back to that spot where Abraham first, where God led Abraham. Then all these generations later, they're back to Shechem where God dropped off Abraham and led Abraham. I don't know.
Hundreds of years later,
not saying it very good.
They come back around to the same piece of property
Right.
where all the promises were made. This is Shechem was one of those interesting places. Abraham, where there was renewal covenant made there anyway, because Shechem was one of those places. If I remember. Okay. I want to say this was right before. No, it should have been right after, if I remember right, when he went and fought those kings to save Lot. Okay. He built an altar at Shechem. Okay. And he's thinking about, what if those kings, he's pondering a lot of thoughts that could be going on. And God comes to him in vision and says, I want you to calm. It's all good. I want to make a covenant with you. Your descendants will walk all over, everywhere you're treading right now. Your descendants will have it all. And that's at this place. And you're sitting there going, really? And so when Joshua comes there, can't you imagine him kind of sitting there going, okay, remember the spot, guys? Now, this is our history. And he's like, and what happened? And where are we now? You can't just see him trying to connect the dots, saying, look at what God has promised and look how he fulfilled it. Because they now run the promised land. There's small skirmishes that still got to be done. Not all of them got done like they should. But by and large, they have the place that Abraham gave, or that God gave Abraham. And so it's a big deal for him to recall the words and bring it up. Now, in Joshua 2 through 13, 24, 2 through 13, it's an interesting part. We don't have to read it all, but the question pops up in the lesson says, what is the main thrust of God's message to Israel in this? There's a 22, 2 through 13. There's a lot here that he's pulling everybody in for. What do you guys see?
It's that God created the nation of Israel, not, it's like, I can't say it. It's because of God that they have it. It's not anything that they inherited from their forefathers, really. It was a gift from God. It was a gift of God.
Well, that's a good point. It wasn't an inheritance like what we passed down, like the Canaanites were passing down. You know, the people of Jericho, you know, as generations went on, they passed down their stuff just like we do too. It wasn't the same. God had given them something that they didn't earn, their forefathers didn't go get. It was a gift. I like that because it's not the same kind of inheritance. Now, God calls it an inheritance at times to say, hey, this inheritance that I gave to Abraham, but they still got to go possess it. They still got to go over and go get it. And so it's an interesting, because they didn't work for it. And God says that several times. I'm going to give you a land you didn't work for. You'll have houses you didn't build. You have vineyards that you're going to enjoy that you didn't work for. And I'm willing to give all this to you. And that's a big point of this thrust. It's kind of like we were saying, it's one thing that you see a lot of people throughout the Bible, and I think a lot of good preachers today and a lot of good Christians, we think about those promises. We bring them up. We bring up the fact that God is blessing us. We bring up the fact that God has done this and this and this. We have our testimonies ready. You see Paul doing it all the time. And be willing to start early and say, well, you remember back in Egypt? Because technically that's our history too. And for us, we can say, well, I remember when I was living in sin. That was my Egypt. And God brought me out here. And he justified me. And then he's working on me through this process and this process and this process, but he's bringing me more in line with his character. That's the same thing Joshua's doing here. He says, don't forget, we were back in Egypt. And then he goes into a lot of the distractions that can come in. So he brings up the triumphs, the promises. This is stuff we should be doing as Christians, bringing these up. And I like how Kay said it, that God, and this lesson said it as well, is had God not intervened in the life of Abraham, they would not have been serving the same. They would have been serving the same idols, which he's talking about in Egypt. It says Israel's existence as a nation is not the merit of any of its ancestors, but the exclusive work of God's grace. Wow! Can't we claim that and say nothing we've done? And when we go to heaven, you see it over and over again where we keep throwing the crowns at God's feet going, there wasn't anything we did. We didn't deserve it. We weren't supposed to be here. There's nothing of any level that merits us being there except pure grace from God. It says the fact that the Israelites are settled in the land is not a ground for boasting, but the very reason why they should serve God. Doesn't that make sense? There's so much to this Christian life that we have that we can enjoy, and we haven't gotten to heaven yet. There are so many blessings, just being the contentment, like was brought up earlier, the peace that just doesn't make sense in times of trouble. There is so much that God gives us, and we haven't gotten to the good stuff yet, to the main course of what's coming. So there's a lot coming. And Joshua's trying to put this into his people at the same time. He's on his last big speech, his last big hurrah for all the people. And he's saying, don't forget the old stuff. and there's still more coming, but you have to follow certain ways. Why does, I'm trying to find the verses I'm looking for.
Didn't Moses do the same thing on his last leg? Everybody that is in the leadership says, let's go back to where we started, guys, and we're going to rehash this whole position. And we did this through almost everybody in the Old Testament and New Testament. Remember where we were as a nation and or group or individuals. And so how important it is to reminisce back to where we were in our own minds, to reflect where God has brought us daily, so we can die daily. I mean, wouldn't that all fit in?
Oh, it does, and that's where and that's where we apply it to our lives today. And yes, Moses did it. All of them did. I mean, all the patriarchs, they all sat back. Even Isaac says, "Okay, bring my sons here. I got to bless them because I think I'm going to die soon." He ended up living a few more years, but he's trying to prepare, get everybody's mindset, and that is something that we're supposed to do, is be willing to pour that out into the next generation too.
Yes.
I know a lot of people that don't do that, and they just assume because the kids are coming along to church, or the kids, or they're just good kids, that they have a firm hold on salvation, and they don't. There's a lot of. I was reading a story just last night about a kid that went off to college. This kid memorized whole chapters of the Bible, whole books of the Bible. And he was the preacher's kid, knew everything. And when he got to college, he declared himself an atheist because he was challenged, and he'd never been challenged. He had never been. Did you read that too? It was it was a wake up call. These were the good kids, and he was the good boy in school and in church and everything, and yet he didn't know how to take salvation and make it his own. He was living off the shirt tails of everybody else, and he was just because the atmosphere was there. And that's where Satan's going to challenge us individually.
Well, wouldn't that be where we as individuals have to have that personal relationship with Jesus Christ, whether or not our folks are there or not there or whatever,
Right.
that we have to make it our own, everybody. And as a kid, we talk to our kids about this. Now, that's harder to do as a kid than, because how do you explain what that is? Because until you live it.
Live some life. There's something that comes with living and having experience.
And that's right.
So,
but the words can at least be there. So there is more to this than just what the Bible says, and it's just rhetoric through the Bible. Everybody has this. It's something personal and in your heart.
Well, that's where you also, when you're teaching those kids, as they're gaining an experience, call it out. Say, I saw this. This is similar to how God works here. Or even comparing it to a Bible story. Did you see how when you prayed, God fulfilled? Or did you see how this person was blessed because you said? And you can, if you keep incorporating it, it's more natural to see. And so,
even into your own life.
Right. And the more you say it, the more you hear it, then you absorb it more, because we believe what we hear. Something we do. Well, what we see, what we hear, we tend to believe. That's why it's very important. On what Joshua was doing, he was very interesting that he brought up two different distinct groups. He says, beware of. He says, beware of the gods that were served back in Egypt, and beware of the gods in Canaan. And he made them different, distinct. He just didn't say, "Oh, beware of every god out there except ours." He actually called it out, because he even I want to say, because he would bring up the Amorites and bring up the Perizzites and the Canaanites and all the different ones. He says, and look where God is blessed here and there, and he says, and then the gods of Egypt. Are there? It's interesting, because I think there's different ways to be thinking about this, because if you put yourself as an Israelite, you grew up, especially they would be older now, but in this story, but they grew up, they knew all the gods of Egypt. Tons of gods. You had Ra, you had I had about 3 on my list this morning, but there were several I was thinking of. But But then he says, well, be also aware of the gods here. They have different gods, kind of. Still, everything is, anything not God is just Satan working through it. But how would you compare that if you were to say that to people today? How can we apply it to what we see today, or if you were to talk about that? Is there a difference? Is there anything out there that you would compare those different sets to in today's view?
When you were talking about the gods, I thought it was interesting that they brought out, he said, put away the foreign gods which are among you. And it was like an awareness.
They're still there.
Some of the Israelites were still keeping them in their tents, keeping it hidden, and sometimes we hide a God that's in us that we worship, and we don't want anybody else to see it. I don't know. I'm probably not making
The
no
thing
sense.
that I can think of is our cell phones, our televisions, our
Yeah,
the things that we give our time to, and a lot of times I feel like I have to justify looking at my phone because I feel convicted about it.
You do too? Me too.
Well, when I listened to Charlie Kirk talk, and he's talking about putting away the phone for the Sabbath,
Wow.
and that's hard. I've tried.
That's
It's
tough
hard.
commitment.
The phone rings and you not only answer it, but you then start thumbing through all the things in your phone. It becomes a stumbling block to you.
You really can.
Well, and another thing could be those things that, I guess you could call them maybe heirlooms, those things that mom and dad had.
Yeah,
Grandma and grandpa had them. You might still have them in your house. And for like me, I'm getting rid of it, but I haven't found the right person to give it to yet. But I have a statue that Dad won at a Catholic bazaar for Mom of Saint Teresa.
Oh, really?
My sisters don't want me to get rid of it, so I've got it wrapped up in the closet. But if it were out, because it was Mom and Dad's, because it was something Dad did, it could affect my life, and I know this. Which is why I have it
stuck in the closet.
Stuck over the closet. So there's those things that we carry with us through our life.
But I think that's what he was saying about the Israelites. They were hiding them away in their closet. They were putting them underneath their bed in the tents. They were hanging on to them.
There's stuff we hang on to.
That we should hang on to.
Well, is he insinuating they worshipped him?
They're there, yeah.
So they're there to be worshipped.
They need to go away.
Yes.
Because they're a distraction from the God that's actually blessing us. This is the God, and he's sitting there going, we've got the land, we're sitting here at Shechem, this is exactly what God said would happen to Abraham. We're here, and it's not those gods you got hiding around. It's not those gods you're worshiping off in secret over here. It's not the gods over in the groves. It's not the gods of Egypt, and it's not the gods of the new land here. And so I followed, when I see those two different distinctions, I'm more like how Mary saw it, is very much like, okay, we've got those old family gods or sins that tend to follow us. Could be alcoholism, could be cursing, could be the things, could be greed, could be anything. And then we got the new fancy little things that jump out at us individually because we're in a new land. We're everything's fresh, and that's where that's where you always watch the poor kids that break out and go to college, and they can go wild because all the new shiny things, Appetite can be another one. It can be everything from money to toys to wanting intelligence to wanting to be recognized as something. Anything can turn into a god very quickly, and that's where I think Joshua's trying to show, you've got that old stuff, and that's kind of an old folklore. Think how many folklores do we know? It's just old American folklore, but people can put it in with something else. There's many times I've heard people quote Aesop's fables thinking it's something out of the Bible, because you get it all mixed up. But these guys are dealing with old Egypt stuff, They're dealing with all the fresh new things in the land. And, oh, look, it's really nice here. And, oh, well, so they got a statue there. And so they've been burning offerings over here. Well, they're wandering into a whole new spot. And it's all the shiny new things. And that's something we need to watch out for, because as sure as we get over something and God's given us victory on something and push something out of our lives, Satan will show up with a new shiny thing every time and distract us and throw us off. And I'm with Lucy. It's my cell phone 90% of the time for me. And it gets old. And I'm like you. I got almost justified anymore. It's like, unless it's not work, why am I on this thing anymore? But it's because Satan's easy to pop that up. I watched a deal the other day. He was talking about this new TV he got. It was off in England. So many pounds he spent on a TV, and it's this new big TV. And the guy says, "Oh no, it costs you way more than that. It costs you about 10 times that." And he's like, "No. I got on sale. This is what I paid for. I can show you a receipt." He's like, "Oh no, because of you didn't calculate all the time you're spending in front of it. You didn't calculate what's really costing you on the other side." It says, "Oh yeah, just buying it, that was nothing." It says, "But what's going to cost you over the next year is going to be." And he'd start doing the math, like, yeah, I mean, if you rush home just a little quicker, or you get out a little later, or you're kind of lagging at work, yeah, that starts to cost because of the distraction. And that's where, Joshua's trying to throw this out at his people. So this is, so that's something, and it's a warning for us today. It wasn't just the warning for Israel back in that day. But, and we can run into that.
On Wednesday's lesson, it just stood out to me that it said Joshua commanded the removal of foreign gods from among them, and there is no report that it actually happened.
Oh.
And I thought that was interesting, because even though he commanded that they be removed, and lots of times in the Bible when they said, get rid of these things, they did get rid of some of the stuff. But it says there is no report of this actually happening.
Nope. It didn't, not anything that was written down. I'm sure some did. I'm sure some went home feeling the new charge from Joshua, the new covenant renewal, going, yes, I want to change this in my life. It's kind of like you're going to see over the next week or so with all the New Year's resolutions. It's like, we're getting a new resolution here. And some of them, I think, went and did it, and they were sincere, but it doesn't show that it was a mass thing that happened throughout Israel. Right. And that's a sad. I'd love to have seen it there, and I'm sure Joshua would have loved to have seen it, that everyone went home and said, we got rid of this junk. Joshua called us back to our duty to it. But if you look throughout the Bible, Moses called them how many times to get rid of stuff, how many times did Joshua, and then you get into Judges and Kings, and it gets worse. Because then it's just this huge free-for-all seesaw of, well, we're in the world, and then we're not in the world. And then there's this call, and it is the craziest mess when you get into, and I'm doing a lot of studies right now in the Old Testament right there. It keeps flipping back and forth. You're like, man, how do you keep somebody, and how do we keep grounded and stay right there? Can we be content? I keep going back to what Ham was saying earlier. Can we be content with God? It's us and God. And why are we not naturally, even the lesson brought out that we're not naturally bent to God being everything for us. It's not our natural. We have to choose it. And that's what Joshua was pulling out.
You're talking about the kings that were good kings that led the people in the right way, the majority maybe of the people in the right way. But then along comes a bad king, and then the majority start going the other direction. I don't know. It's just, there's still that element. There's the element is there, and our tendency is to go that direction. Where it's our tendency to do that.
Yeah. And
it has to be a determination not to go that way.
It's easy to get pulled into that group mindset.
It really is.
And sin likes company. Well, you got an excuse if your leader's doing it. That's where Joshua kept trying to pull back in, saying, hey, we don't want to go that route. And how many times did Moses make that charge So one day when there's kings, don't go back to Egypt. Don't go get horses. Don't be looking back at the other way. He keeps charging all the leaders, stay close to God, stay close to God. Because like you say, sin likes company. And if we see a leader acting up, we can go, well, if they're doing it.
If it's legal, it's okay.
If it's legal, it's okay.
And
Yeah.
I've always said, I don't care if they do make it legal, it's still not right.
I agree.
It's, and I mean, the United States legalizes a lot of stuff that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
And just because it's legal doesn't make it right.
No, that's very true. Very true. At the end of the chapter, it pulls in, we're just about out of time, but at the end of the chapter, it pulls in this death of Joshua and Eleazar. Whoever's writing finished it out, concluded the book for us. And it's interesting because, like we were saying before, everybody kind of finishes up where they started out. And they talk about, in verse 32, the bones of Joseph were laid to rest. Remember, they brought him out of Egypt. Can you imagine that? Somebody had to be in charge of that casket that whole time. That's a lot of years carrying somebody around the wilderness. And it probably took more than one. But for that promise to be kept, they had a detail just for that. And of course, Eleazar died, which was the high priest after Aaron. And then we had, and Joshua, and they're concluding this whole thing. But I love what was so left there was that charge. You get to choose, but as for me and my house, when he makes that stand, and like I said, we all have that in our house somewhere. It's written on something. I don't care if it's a coffee mug to the dining room table to up on the wall. It's somewhere in your house, more than likely. But here we have this conclusion here, and it leaves it back into our hands with the choice. At the very end of the day, he leaves it the same way we have it every day. We get to look at that, and don't forget that any day can be our last day. Any day can be finish up, but we want to leave on that same level that Joshua did, and Caleb, and all these patriarchs that we've been reading about. We want to leave on those good things. Anything else in the lesson that was brought out that you guys want to jump into before we?
It does say in verse 31, and Israel served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders that overlived Joshua. So there was a point in time that
It was a revival of some sort.
yes, that God was worshipped during at least all that time.
Mm-hmm.
Certain elders and in the life of Joshua. That's saying something, and especially for the leadership.
Mm-hmm. Said that there were some leaders that took it to heart, that pushed it, and there were some people that went with those revivals, and they joined in, and like we were saying, probably got rid of some of their gods that they were worshiping, and you see it in the next book too with Judges. It's up and down, and as long as that judge lived, there was good until that one died.
On Friday's lesson,
Mm-hmm.
the Ellen White quote,
Mm-hmm.
that paragraph at the top of
Mm-hmm. I had that highlighted too.
Friday's lesson
Mm-hmm.
is really good.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was actually what I was going to end on.
Okay, good.
You read my mind on that one.
You read it, not me.
Oh, you can read it if you want.
No.
Okay, we'll finish up with that. It says, among the multitudes that came up out of Egypt were many who had been worshippers of idols, and such is the power of habit that the practice was secretly continued to some extent, even after the settlement in Canaan. Joshua was sensible of this evil among the Israelites, and he clearly perceived the dangers that would result. He earnestly desired to see a thorough reformation among the Hebrew host. He knew that unless the people took a decided stand to serve the Lord with all of their hearts, they would continue to separate themselves farther and farther from him. While a portion of the Hebrew hosts were spiritual worshipers, many were formalists. No zeal or earnestness characterized their service. Some were idolaters at heart who would be ashamed to acknowledge themselves as such. This solemn covenant was recorded in the book of the law to be sacredly preserved. Joshua then set up a great stone under an oak that was by the sanctuary of the Lord. And Joshua said unto all the people, behold, that stone shall be a witness unto us, for it hath heard all the words of the Lord, which he had spoke to us. And shall be therefore a witness unto you, lest you deny your God. Here Joshua plainly declared that his instructions and warnings to the people were not his own words, but the words of God. This great stone would stand to testify to succeeding generations of the event which was set up to commemorate, and would be a witness against the people should they ever again degenerate into idolatry. You know, Joshua was big on those stones, those different monuments and memorials. You know, when they crossed um, the Jordan. Yeah, when they crossed the Jordan and came across, he says, let's set up these stones. That is something that I think is very important, and it's another thing I think we lack in our modern society is we don't set up those reminders to ourselves of what God has done for us. It's not something that very many when you walk somebody's house, a lot of times they don't have those, hey, God's done this for me. You don't have those red flags, those things. I keep pictures of different things in my phone, or I'll do different things that help me remind. I do a lot of underlining in my Bible, but there's events in my life that God will sit there and he has shown me that he exists. And there's a few events I hold on to that I know God was there, and there's really nothing you can do to convince me otherwise. So when I'm down and I go to those certain remembrances and go, I know I was there, and you cannot take that away from me. There's nothing you can say that will take that away from me. And so we need to remember that, and that's why Joshua was big on these stones. Is we need to remember what God has done for us. I think there was a lot of good in this. I'm going to miss the study of Joshua. It was very, very good.
Number 4 in the discussion question.
Say that again.
Number 4 on the discussion question.
Okay.
Is that application to us?
I got to do it on our screen. The last one? Think about the life of Joshua and the conclusion that in all his life, the Israelites served the Lord. What conclusion would you like the people to draw about your life? You pull back to that. It's just along those same lines. Very true. All right, well, we'll have a closing prayer. Lord, we thank you so much for this beautiful Sabbath day. We thank you for the story of the life of Joshua. We thank you that it was recorded and preserved, that it was sent down all these many years to our time where we can learn about what you did through the nation of Israel at that time and through several very key prominent people. We thank you for the courage that he had to stand his ground and to set an example for those around him. I ask, Lord, that we'd be able to apply this to our lives, that we'd be able to apply it to our families and to those around us, and that we can be able to stand on those same principles that he did and stand firmly there. We thank you so much that you have given us grace and opportunity to be able to learn of this stuff and to be able to move forward in what you show us. In your name.